Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. We are live on X. We are live on YouTube. And we cannot wait to get into the latest happenings in the market from the last 24 hours. But before we do that, just a quick reminder, as always, nothing that we say here is financial advice. We don't know anything for sure. Please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. This is what I would describe as a risky market. You may have heard that before. Legendary, with that little disclaimer out of the way, today is Friday, the 5th of January. For some reason, for me, it feels like January has been going on for a really, really long time. I mean, we weren't even live on Monday. It was New Year, and so we've only had a 4-day week. Feels like it's going on forever. How are you doing?
GM. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. It kind of feels like we've been 3 months into January. I
Yeah,
think it's because of
feels
the
crazy.
massive crisis impromptu spaces that we had. Like, what was it, two days ago?
Yeah.
So it definitely feels like a long month, despite it only being the first week, really, in Jan. Doing quite well. Enjoying my first full day of holiday. Did travel to Qatar yesterday. Had a bit of a chance to explore the city, to explore Doha a bit. Obviously, love the weather here right now. And I also told you before the call, I love how clean the city looks. It's surreal coming from a European capital, whether that's London, whether that's Vienna, and you're used to like the busy, crowded, but always like a bit of there's dirt and rubbish on the streets, etc. kind of look, to come to this like very almost clinically clean streets, which is quite nice to see.
Yes, indeed. That is definitely one of the outcomes of having very strict laws. It kind of makes you think sometimes that some strict laws are good, not just strict laws when they're written down, but strict laws in enforcement. I remember I've been to the Middle East as well at some point, and I'm pretty sure, I don't want to make this up. I'm pretty sure, like, if you steal, do they cut your hand off? Legendary, is that what they do?
I mean, it depends on the country, I would say. But they don't do it in all the cases anymore. That would be a bit exaggerated. But
But
what they do in Qatar is, if you're like working on a visa and you don't comply with the local laws, you will be just banned from the country and basically immediately deported.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. But one of the observations, and the reason why I think what I just said was true, is because they do have really strict enforcement of laws like that. And so much so that people, I remember specifically this happening, people who were before like the Friday prayer, where people would typically like, you know, leave the shop to go to the mosque to pray. We would see people who would just leave the shop, not bother closing it down, not bother locking it, not bother making sure that anyone is there to like look after it. They would literally just walk out of the shop. The money's there, the items are there, because they know no one is going to steal anything. Like that's completely insane. Like if you're coming from Europe at the moment.
Yeah, imagine you could do that in crypto. Just have your seed phrase on your MacBook, do everything on your hot wallet, connect to all websites, never worry about getting scammed or getting your funds hacked or stolen in any sort of form. That would be a bit different. Like we are
What would
so
have to be the
so
consequence? Like, look, say I have my seed phrase flashing across the screen on the modern market. What would the
yeah.
consequence have to be for someone? Because, like, I guess cutting someone's hand off for stealing makes sense because you use your hand to steal. So, what would be the equivalent?
Deleting their X account. Deleting their X account.
Yeah, that's like what the worst torture possible, right?
Yeah, no, but all jokes aside, I think it is um, quite relaxing to have this holiday week going on before I'm back, like fully back next Thursday, and hopefully by then we have an official ETF approval, and hopefully by then there will be no more time and chance to take a break from the market at all.
Mm, that is good. Nice little introduction into the headlines. Let's get straight into it. We're going to bring you all of the headlines from the last 24 hours. As always, everything that I present to you is information from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Let's get into it. Starting with the price action, we have Bitcoin up 3% at 44.2K, ETH up a couple of percent at 2.3, Solana up 4%, back over 100 now at $103. Ape still languishing a little bit, down a couple of percent at 1.5. NFT volume on ETH was 11.5 million, Solana was 6.6, Bitcoin 21.8. First headline, Bitcoin ETF appears close, though Bitwise findings suggest less than half of advisors expect BTC ETF in 2024. Definitely want to talk about that a little bit because I saw various interpretations of that kind of survey result and people debating whether that's good or bad. Number two, Binance Labs announces an investment in meme. That's pretty significant. We were talking about the investability of meme coins as an asset class. So I want to talk about those. And finally, I think this is significant. Jack Butcher announces, I think it's actually 500 ordinal checks. He's announced that 250 ordinal checks will be gifted to creators and collectors of the single checks, his original checks collection. And then there's going to be 250 spare that we don't know exactly what's going to happen with yet, but pretty significant because ordinals, that narrative seems to be catching on a bit harder now, especially with the success of node monkeys. So definitely want to discuss that and think about where ordinals are going. In terms of your floor price action, you got CryptoPunk still at 56.5, Bored Apes at 26.7, Mutants at 5, DGods at 3.4, Captains at 4.1, Azuki at 6.1, Penguins at 10.7, Moonbirds at 1.3, and Nouns at 8.7. No real big movers there actually on the ETH side, all pretty static. And you got a couple of very notable sales. One, CryptoPunk Purple Hair for 65.5 ETH. That's $147,000. And Videodrome Lost Robbie. People like this one. 150 ETH. That is $340,000. Real classic story behind that one. They always trade in about that region. We like to see those go for high prices. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Anything grabbing your attention before we get into the headlines?
What grabbed my attention is BNB flipped Solana again. Like they are having this constant battle between the top 4 and the top 5 spot. And what I also realized is I finally took the time to buy into Say and explore that blockchain a little bit. It's on my list of things to do for the weekend. And I did realize that there was a small correction, I think 7% or something like that today. So I managed to buy the absolute top on that, but I'm still excited about that exploration. And another number that also did catch my attention and maybe serves a bit as a segue into the first piece of news and contrasts that advisor number that you just shared is the betting situation. You know, the degen gambler that I am, obviously looked if you can bet on the Bitcoin approval on Polymarket, which is that very, very popular platform for all sorts of bets going on, from
Interesting.
crypto, sports, politics, everything you can bet on there. And there is a bet on will the SEC approve BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF by, I think it's March 30th. Yes, it's March 30th. And the most of the money is on yes, it will be approved. So if you were to wager $1,000 and it gets approved, you just get $53 in profit in return. So it's 95% currently.
Wow.
On that platform, more than 1 million already in that bet in that sees the Bitcoin ETF being approved by March 30th. And there's also a bet for an approval by January 15th. So within the next 10 days. And that stands at over 83% of the bets currently in favor of an approval within the next 10 days.
Wow. Okay. That's really, really significant. That's super interesting. What's your, a couple of questions. What's your general experience with this particular site? Has it been the case in the past where wherever the money is, especially when it's a I would describe those numbers as a landslide, really. Like that seems like the vast majority of the money is on yes, at least at a minimum before March. and even the vast majority of money is on yes, even in the next 10 days. So taking that into account, has your experience on this site been that most of the time when the vast majority of money is in a certain direction, is that what plays out? How have you kind of experienced these kind of betting markets online before?
In particular, in crypto, I found it quite interesting to observe Polymarket and similar sites when it comes to airdrops. I think the first time it really
Yeah.
got my attention was the Arbitrum airdrop back in, when was Arbitrum? This year? Last year?
March.
This year, sorry, no, in 2023, right? March
Yeah.
last year.
I actually
And
don't know if it's March. Who knows?
I think it was March. And I remember that there was always a week, will there be an airdrop? Will the ARB token be introduced within the next 2 weeks? And it was like mostly 50% yes, 50% no. So like kind of a bit lacking a very decisive direction. And at one point that changed, and there wasn't the trailer video out yet. There wasn't an official announcement out yet. And at one point, the odds in favor of the token dropping within the next 2 weeks like shot up significantly. Obviously, the assumption there being that someone did have a bit of privileged information, let's call it like that, a bit of early information, and wanted to put that to use in the betting market. So it's quite interesting to observe markets like this, although there is a difference between obviously having like a Web3 native product like Arbitrum, where some people will know more, and some people in the team will know more about a TGE or about the dates, and they can bet on that if they wanted to do so. Not saying that this is morally, ethically okay or whatever. It's not the point of this discussion. Just saying
Yeah.
or stating what potentially happened, or what potentially is also happening in this market quite often. And that's a bit different with something that, while crypto related, has so many official and legal implications that it's not as easy, I would say, to have insider information on whether the SEC will approve it within the next 10 days or not. So keeping that in mind, I would say there's a big difference between having info on a potential TG of a token and betting on that, and then seeing, oh, someone knew about it and did bet on Polymarket, and then having info on that Bitcoin ETF. If you have that info, you would probably not head to Polymarket, but you would probably just straight market buy Bitcoin if you had any inkling of some kind of reliable information, whether the outcome is yes or no. So I would say Polymarket is reliable, to cut it short, but with this specific bet, I would be maybe a bit more on the careful side to just fully trust whatever betting situation is going on there.
Interesting. That's really, really interesting. Very insightful. We've got a couple more thoughts on it. The first one is, again, kind of a question. You mentioned for something where people don't know, and you described the Arbitrum airdrop, which, as we know, is like a huge airdrop for a lot of participants. If you were to try to look at the betting market and see, try to read the tea leaves and see what it was trying to tell you, say they were predicting it in 2 weeks, but ultimately people don't know. Surely I would have thought the proportion which is on versus off would be like 50-50. Sorry, it shouldn't be 50-50, because the point is people don't know. So I would have thought that it would have been like far more like, no, it's not coming. So I guess what you're saying is when people don't know, there's still a 50-50 element. So that means people are losing routinely on the yes bet, basically. They're losing routinely on the yes bet, and then that flips to majority yes, rather than there being like majority no. Because I'm trying to think, like in a way, in the same way that the insiders know when it's a yes, why aren't they voting no when they know it's not? Do you see what I mean? It should be the inverse.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from with this, but I do think that, again, if you're an insider in this case, the first thing to do would not to go to Polymarket and bet there,
Sure.
despite being able to have all kinds of bets on there. I mean, I had a bit of a deeper look before the show to see what else is going on. And just a very, very quick side note on that, because we also spoke about it
let's do it.
before our show, and me currently being on holiday in Qatar having like a very strict policy when it comes to crypto. But remember, we talked about it on the modern market at some point in December last year, when there was this rumor that some Qatari official fund is looking at buying up to $500 billion in Bitcoin, And there was this one analyst that said, there might be the God candle sending Bitcoin in one move straight to 100K, which obviously is a bit ridiculous. But there's even a bet on that. There is a bet on there if Qatar will buy Bitcoin by January 31st, which sees only 14% of the money on yes, by the way. And for a more comparable bet that I also found interesting is a bet on the ETF approval for Ethereum, not for Bitcoin.
Oh, interesting.
Ethereum, way smaller betting size than Bitcoin. Obviously, the Bitcoin bets have more than $1 million in there in money, and the Ethereum ETF bets are way smaller and significantly trending to not seeing an Ethereum spot ETF approved by neither January 31st nor March 31st. So there's like only 16 and 36% of the money on a yes for Ethereum spot ETF by either end of Jan or end of March.
Very interesting. That's very, very interesting. I mean, one of the initial thoughts, got some good comments in the comment section, want to shout out in a second. But one interesting thought was I saw a tweet yesterday from OSF referencing maybe a different maybe it's this ETF. I need to double check. But basically saying that lots of people have just fundamentally misunderstood where we are in the ETF cycle. I think people will ask the question like, do you think it's going to go through or do you think it's going to be delayed? And I think his point was that delay is not an option at this point in time for the Bitcoin one. We need to double check that. Maybe I'll check as we speak. But the point was, for at least the Bitcoin one, it can't be delayed. It has to be yes or it has to be no now. Are you able to confirm that at the moment, Legendary, or do I need to just double check that?
Happy for you to double check that. And while you do that, I will shout out some of the comments that we are seeing so far. Tito is saying Polymarket and Betfair are awesome sources of alpha. Most recently, they called the shock result in the Argentinian election before any of the media. It's free money if you know the outcome. They do get it wrong, though. Example given, the Brexit.
Absolutely. That's the exact one I was going to shout out. Thank you, Pete Dito, for that. Fascinating stuff. Maybe we need to be looking here a little bit more. Very, very interesting. Want to throw to Funky. I know your hand was raised. I have got confirmation of what I was going to say, but want to throw to Funky first. Funky, welcome.
I didn't raise my hand, but GM and welcome. Yeah, I just agree with everything that you guys are saying. At this point, there's no the cat's out of the bag, right? How are we going to not approve the ETF? So, I think it all makes sense.
Sounds good. Sorry, I thought you did have your hand raised, but that is kind of the sentiment that we're coming to conclude with as well. Just want to show people on screen for the people who are there, but we'll read it out for you if you're just listening in. OSF tweeted, this is the tweet I was talking about, mental that 38% of people still think there's going to be a delay tomorrow. It's an approval or rejection. The latter would probably involve a court case, need legitimate reasons for rejection, and result in completely new applications being required with those reasons addressed. So interesting. So yeah, I think that's what I was referring to. And maybe people just aren't entirely on top of where we are in that kind of cycle and applications. And to be fair to people, can be a little bit confusing because it seems like we've been having this conversation for many, many months. There's various applications. There's all this due process going on. So I can understand where some of the confusion is, but ultimately you need to know where the facts are at this point in time. Legendary, any final reflections on that before we actually get into some of the details of where we might actually be with it today?
Yeah, not a final reflection, but a funny addition to add to that is I had a dream last night. I'm not saying that my dreams are prophetic, but
right. So now we go to Polymarket and we check your dreams.
Betting the markets, we go to the dream markets. No, the point is, I had a dream that the ETF approval went through, and I woke up, and ETH and BTC did pump 40 to 50%, and ETH was at 3K. Again, the point is not to say that this is going to happen. The point is to say that it felt amazing for those like 5 seconds in the morning to wake up and think, oh, wow, ETH at 3K looks fucking nice.
That is outrageous. I've yet to have an ETF dream yet. Is that like a special type of dream only for the
I
bull
mean, I
market.
dream about crypto quite frequently. I don't know about you, but I mean, I also like remember my days, my dreams on almost every day, but I do dream about crypto quite frequently. I see Whale laughing in the audience, must think I'm an utter degenerate, but I think Whale knows that I am, so that's no news for him.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any of these dreams yet, but it seems like the place to be is in, well, the content to be analyzing is the dreams and the betting market. So, we also have some other more reputable sources than Legendary's dreams in terms of what's going on with the latest ETF stuff. In the last 24 hours, despite the crazy market report that was presented towards the start of the week, a senior Bloomberg analyst says the spot Bitcoin ETF approval is very close now. Just looking at this article, we have, let me just share the screen. We have, oops, Eric Balkunas, a senior ETF analyst at Bloomberg, says that we are as close as ever to official approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs in the US. Balkunas says that the SEC is giving their final comments to issuers on their applications, and the multiple applicants will submit their final forms after the comments. A little bit further context, it is unclear which ETF applicants will be the first to have their ETFs approved, as many issuers are looking for approval. Investment and asset managers such as Fidelity, BlackRock, and Grayscale are among the applicants for spot Bitcoin ETFs. Furthermore, multiple applicants have begun submitting their registrations of securities with the SEC, alerting investors that the first approvals may be close. That seems like we're certainly trending in the right direction, Legendary. I don't know if we necessarily have to touch on this much more because we've been speaking about it the last few days. But what's your kind of final reflection from that latest piece of news? And also maybe a little bit more of a thought now in terms of price action of where we might go, because we've also been discussing that and interested in that.
Yeah, I think a lot will, so again, assuming the approval will go through, a lot will depend on the fee structure of the ETFs. I think it's something that we talked about. For me, what I am interested to see in the midterm is how, the volume that goes into those ETFs will develop. It's not only about the price action, but like having the concrete demand for the ETF and seeing that in US dollars on the one hand. And on the other hand, what I am really curious to see is how all those centralized exchanges will handle an ETF situation from the perspective that if you look at a company like Coinbase, did I think close to $2 billion in fees last year. Most of those fees being obviously collected by the trading and swapping fees on the platform. And I know that a lot of volume happens because of Bitcoin and ETH. And I know that also significant volumes happens in the futures and the perps markets and as well as other cryptocurrencies. But still, for them, it will potentially be a major chunk of the revenue that could go away when it's suddenly way, way cheaper to not trade via Coinbase or any of the other large exchanges. But if you want to buy and sell Bitcoin, you can do that with a spot ETF then. So that will be interesting to see how their business model will develop and shape out over the future in a world where we have spot ETFs for both BTC and ETH.
Interesting that you bring up ETH. Kind of, it's funny how we do this. Like as soon as one thing gets to the point of conclusion, we keep one eye now. You know, the focus starts to shift, thinking about the next thing. I think we're all very in tune with that, especially because the market is always so forward looking. So we're kind of thinking, well, what's next? That's actually what Miss A also put in the comments. Fact is that BlackRock has approved 575 out of 576 applications. That is very important information to note. And they also said I would start looking at how the ETH ETF will come right after that. We have Miss A with us on stage, definitely on top of all of this news as it was happening yesterday. Miss A, welcome to the stage. I believe this is your first time with us. What's your contribution to this topic?
Good morning. Thank you. No, I was really enjoying listening to how it's been viewed from across the pond indeed. And being an expat, I can see the distinctions of the 2 points of view. A couple of elements that are going to be very interesting, which is why I said that, is that BlackRock has a very good track record of getting them approved, as you could see. And BlackRock does have quite a hold on the power between the SEC and them.
Mhm.
However, one of the things that we're also probably not seeing from the strategic high-level helicopter view is the fact that the reason I bought up the ETF for ETH is because of the fact that what Legendary just said about Coinbase, you're also maybe overlooking that Coinbase is a custodial for BlackRock.
Yes.
So once the money comes in from like Fidelity, ARK Investments, or any of these ETFs that go forward, you have to look at the quantity of people in the United States who are at retirement age, or boomers, your grandmas, your grandpas, that actually have their retirement funds in there already. That's important to understand, that this is going to give them an entry in. From there, it's also that if they are gonna sell, they're gonna sell and settle in fiat, not in ETH or Bitcoin. So we really have to keep that in the top of mind. And then finally, once the BTC does get approved, it just means the ETH is right after that. And that will just give me I've been in this space over 10 years, so I definitely have been watching these quite a lot. And I am a rabbit hole researcher, as I like kind of calling myself sometimes. But it's really about looking at the narratives and how they connect the dots, right? This is important to understand, that Coinbase, because a dear friend of mine works for Coinbase, he was just in London last week. They were just in London having conversations in England about setting up shop in the UK, Coinbase. So we have to look at the high-level helicopter view narrative and then drill it down to the minutiae, as I put in one of my comments the other day, right? B-check, that's what I was trying to kind of get at, is that we could kind of beat it a dead horse, but it's unnecessary. We're going to move forward, but the key here is, how are these different jurisdictions going to bring these products forward to the populace? And how are we going to onboard more people? But at the same token, some people may want the true sovereignty of taking it on their own, not your keys, not your wallet, whereas the larger part of the population may just want that way of entry. And there was another gentleman in another stage, it was just specifically stating that the ETF is also going to be something that will allow family offices and private wealth investors to actually get in, because it secures them to enter that product and offer it to their clients.
Sure.
Because these clients are not going to be doing it themselves. They're not going to put $1 billion or $1 million in it by themselves. They're going to want it to have some sort of security.
Yeah.
And by that ETF showing up, it gives them that security. That's why I said it will get approved.
Sure.
And then the next one after that will be ETF, ETH that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, go on, Legendary.
It's quite interesting to see how still everyone is, waiting for what the US markets are doing on this one, because you have spot ETFs in Europe already for BTC, but they didn't see a lot of demand. You don't really have family offices, etc., tapping into them, because still everyone is waiting for the US markets to move first across the pond as well, and they're not really incentivized to move without seeing the US situation play out first.
Yeah, this is one of the key conclusions I've come to when observing our own country's activity, actions, the way that they moves. We're basically like a 50-second state of the United States, eight times out of 10, where if you try to move out of sync with the states, we just get completely wrecked in some form. And I think one of the things that might have happened towards the start of this year, and this is from a few conversations that I was having with people, is that when the states seemed to be clamping down, or at least when their rhetoric was clamping down on this on crypto and everything in this universe, and it seemed like for a period of time the UK was becoming more open, right? I don't know if you remember when that happened, when A16Z moved over. There was like this very big pro crypto approach, wanting to attract all the people that might not be able to operate properly in the States, or at least it seemed like there was something going on in that direction. And then we've had a couple of things which have come out in the UK which have kind of reversed that. I was talking with a lawyer friend the other day, talking about these financial promotion rules, which have really come in and dampened what is possible to say in the UK about these types of assets. And that's why you might see, I think this that definitely happened a few weeks ago, I don't know if it's still there, but on the Binance Twitter account, it will say like, not for people in the UK or something like that. And we've seen that happen a couple of times. And I wonder whether, conversations were had to some extent where it's like, look, You guys can't just become an open place and undermine and undercut everything we're doing. Look, I think, as you say, Miss A, like the US is on its path now, but I don't think they're going to be okay with just letting people undercut them, particularly allies, like broad allies. Like, it's not for you to just take all the top companies away. They're just going to want it to be done at the time and pace appropriate. I want to give you a chance to come back there. You had to raise, Miss A. One final thought, because we want to move on then.
I just wanted to chime in and just dovetail to what you just said. The larger institutions will start to regulate it to come in. And there is an innovation law that I just heard from some friends in the UK. It's also kind of exactly agreeing with what you're talking about in the UK, that it seems on the surface that it's positive, but it's actually a bit of a bear hug, where it's going to bring it in and then squeeze the life out of it. And then that will in turn allow people, to the big boys, to actually be able to navigate and manage it the way they've done to date. Like your Barclays, your Lloyds, all of the big financial institutions in London. That's literally what you're looking at. And because Europe's usually behind the US, because Europe is a bunch of countries versus United States being one country, each country operates differently. But London is a 10 million strong city. So that's where you're going to have to see London is probably going to want to hold on to their foothold of being a TradFi / Coinbase custody AC16D hub. But that's it.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Really interesting discussion there. Thank you for that, Miss A. Leslie, one final question I wanted to ask on this point was just this, more about the sentiment that people are taking away. Maybe we've already talked about it, but just wanted to check in with you before we move on to the other stuff. This idea that less than half of all advisors expect a spot Bitcoin ETF in 2024. And one of the things that I thought one of the things that I observed from the timeline was that there were multiple people, including OSF and Ansem, who thought that this is like incredibly bullish, that no one, I'm not entirely sure what the thesis was, but the idea that less than half of advisors expect there to be an ETF in 2024, they were just like, this is so bullish. It's so bullish. What's your thought on that? Like, is it bullish that they just don't know what's going to hit them? Is that the thinking?
It is. It is bullish. I mean, if everyone would expect it, then the likelihood would be super high that the event would already be priced in, at least for the short term, not for the medium to long term inflows of money.
Sure.
But if the majority is not expecting it, and despite the the majority outside of crypto, or those advisors are not expecting it, and despite that, we've seen the run up to 45K. That makes it even more bullish in the case of an approval, because it kind of leaves a lot of room for more runway to go up.
Yeah, okay. That actually makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense when you said that out loud. Probably should have thought of that before I asked the question, but helpful to put it out there into the universe. Anyway, just a quick shout out to Matthew in the comments as well, saying that Coinbase fees will drop with the ETF, but this will likely be offset by being the custodian for these ETFs. Either way, I think is very bullish Coinbase. People on the timeline have certainly been bullish Coinbase for a long time. Well, at least the stock price tanked for a while, and there's been on a real tear up in the kind of last half of 2023. So that is good for them. Let's get on to the Binance Labs investment into the meme coin. This is actually linking with the point I was just making about Binance saying that certain stuff is not for the UK. This actually manifests when I try to click on the article which explains the investment, and it doesn't let me in. It doesn't let me in to read the article about the investment that they've made into meme coin. So that's just a quick point on that. But the broader question, Legendary, is we were speaking the other day about these meme coins being very, becoming more investable assets. Remember the other day, AVAX came out and said, like, we're going to create a fund to stimulate the culture on our chain via buying some of these meme coins. What do you think about this kind of formal investment from Binance into meme coin?
I like the way how they basically argue the investment in that article, in that official press release, saying that the team behind Memeland has over 15 years of experience building community-based products with a mission of bringing ownership to every community in the world beyond its NFTs and meme token. Memeland offers meme farming and has plans to introduce several upcoming features and services. These features are aimed at enhancing user experiences and promoting community involvement, including unique NFT staking mechanisms, social networks for community members to collaborate, and liquid staking of ETH. The vision for Memeland to evolve into a fully decentralized, community-driven platform where current NFT holders will have access to govern the Memeland DAO. I do like exactly the wording that they chose. We talk about it in a similar context when we talked about AVEX and their official way that they found to buy, I don't want to say invest, to buy meme coins. And I do like the wording of the community-driven, community-focused products that Binance is liking in meme and meme coins specifically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's genuinely becoming, and I was reflecting on this just in the last few days, and it was kind of manifested by a tweet from Ansem yesterday, where he said, like, you know, these are genuinely new, very different assets. Like, I know that there's some correlation. I know we kind of watch the chart in the same way that traditional traders watch charts, and like we do some calculations around FDV and market cap, and we do look at those things, and that might be a traditional thing. But he was making the point that there's no way that traditional finance people would be able to come into this market and understand how to trade these coins. Like, you can use all of your models, you can do all of the things, but to understand from where a meme coin gets its value, where it clearly does, because it does it over and over again across different chains in different times, and there clearly contains a huge amount of value in there. But to understand that fundamentally, you have to have been in this space at least for a reasonable period of time, and there's no way that it would be possible for other people to understand that. So it kind of just made me think more that this is a really new investable asset class. And maybe this is obvious, but it's just kind of confirmed it to me now that we see almost a formal route taken by like literally the foundation of a chain, and the official labs of one of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges. They're like, no, we're actually going to carve out a proportion of our funds to specifically invest in this investable asset class, which I don't necessarily know if that had happened before. What do you think on that kind of reflection? I can see K Sensei with their hand raised. Definitely want to throw to them in just one moment. Legendary first.
Yeah, I think it is very significant from the standpoint that they could have very well invested in the company to contribute to invest maybe in a specific product if they were interested in that. But they did, Binance Labs, that is, specifically go for an investment into meme, into the token itself. And that is what adds a lot of significance to me as well.
Absolutely. Makes sense. K Sensei, what are your thoughts on this meme investment and anything else we just kind of brought to the table there?
GM guys, thank you for having me. I'm here with a bit of a contrarian addition,
Nice.
Which is first of all, I love that you're discussing meme coins so seriously. I think they deserve it. But the thing I have to say about it is I don't think meme coin is actually like a meme coin, as in the captain's ecosystem meme. It's an ecosystem token. I think it's more appropriate to liken it to like Pixel or Ape coin, because I think that's the intention behind it. I mean, it's cool to call it a meme coin because haha memes, but it's actually not very like Bonk or like whatever dog with like they don't compare well. And likewise, I'm not sure the AVAX investment, into Cock or whatever meme coins is comparable to Binance investment into this, because again, I think it's just very different tokens. The end.
Very, very good point. I actually completely agree with that clarification. I think they got me. I mean, they called it meme. they called it meme. They completely got me with that. I think you're actually completely right on that. It's not a meme coin like those other things. So they should be distinguished actually for that reason. Legendary, do you have any thoughts on that?
But that kind of adds exactly to the point that you also made before, P-Check, like for people who are outside of this space, who are in TradFi, and remember, I come from a TradFi background. For them, it would be impossible to understand what's going on, because if they would try to follow this process, they would look at the white paper of the meme token, which is a white paper that we have discussed extensively on this show, that says don't expect anything. In essence, there's nothing to see.
And the white paper for meme token is great. It's really
hilarious,
good if
right?
you haven't read it already.
And if you'd be a TradFi person and you see this investment happening in a token that's called meme, and then we're like, oh, maybe it is an ecosystem token, let's check the white paper. And I'm not arguing with what Kei Sensei said. Kei Sensei is absolutely right with that. I'm just trying to emulate that from a TradFi person's perspective. And then that person would see the white paper and says, there's nothing to see, there's nothing here. It would be impossible for them to understand what the fuck is going on in the space.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, yeah, it completely makes no sense, even if it isn't a meme coin. So I guess the on some level, it's like, okay, well, maybe the meme coins are dumb. It's like, well, even if it's not a meme coin, it's still dumb. So that's one of the ways to look at it. I've just found the tweet from Anson. This is kind of funny. He said, trying to imagine a stocks guy with no background knowledge on crypto, trying to understand the following things. It's up on YouTube for the people who are listening. L1s, L2s, L3s, app chains, validiums, sovereign rollups, integrated versus modular architectures, DA layers, intents, restaking, EVM versus alt VMs, DeFi, GameFi, MemeFi. It's just not possible, right?
Yeah, I went to this, it was around Christmas, Boston Consulting Group had a Christmas crypto event with the Near Foundation, and basically they did talk about some of those trends, and some of them they explained, but I think it was the CEO of the foundation who said, when he got to talk about DA, data abstraction layers, for those who are not familiar with the acronym, it was like, okay, at this point, I'm just going to stop explaining the technical stuff. I'm not going to explain what DA does, how ZK and rollups work exactly, because he didn't even expect it from people who are consulting in crypto, which BCG is, and the audience to fully understand what's going on with that.
Yeah, pretty insane. I thought it was worth touching on that because I don't know. I think the more you get into it, the less you become appreciative of how strange some of this stuff might be for the people on the outside. And you can have like concrete conviction in some meme coin. And if you were to tell any normal person, it's like, what on earth are you talking about? Like, you make absolutely no sense to them. So worth just discussing that and thinking about it. We want to move on to the final headline, which is the Jack Butcher news on ordinals, and try to consider what's going on over there. If it's a bigger, broader movement than just one particular collection, the monkeys, which have clearly sent over the last week or so. But before we do that, just to get you up to speed with what else has happened around the rest of the space in the last 24 hours, as always, from the snapshot, we've been through the headlines, we've done the price action. Let's get to the other Web3 roundup news. Number one, Floor Protocol is issuing over $1.7 million over the next month for liquidity providers. Definitely want to check in with Legendary on that in a second, because I know he was doing something over there. Is it still good? Is it bad? What's going on? Number two, Node Monkeys do another 156 Bitcoin of volume, which is $6.8 million in 24 hours, to rise to a 0.27 Bitcoin floor. That's pretty impressive. They've flipped Bitcoin frogs quite some time ago. Number three, Celsius announces ETH selling as part of restructuring. I didn't know this, but it appears that Celsius has been unstaking, or they've held more than 800 million of ETH, and they were one of the biggest stakers and have been consistently selling for $20 million worth a week on the market for months. That's not something I was aware of. That seems to be what was reported today, and that's been happening. So might be one of the reasons why ETH is suppressed compared to other things. Number four, Disney Pinnacle sells out. We reported on them the other day. They sold out some Star Wars pins, so they're running back the NFT stuff, but more in a more official capacity. In the more news section, we've got Pixel Vault Gaming Protocol Reboot announcing more artistic collaborators with very prominent artists like Kath Simmert, Dave Krugman, and Stops there. And finally, another airdrop for AVAX, TIA, and Atom holders. Saga announced an airdrop for people in that ecosystem. So that is the rest of the roundup from what everything else has been going on in the space. Legendary, Maybe quick touch on flooring protocol from you before we hit the ordinals.
Absolutely. Quick addition on the Saga airdrop. It's also for people who have been staking Matic, so the Polygon native token, officially, which I have been doing for the last 2 years, which makes me quite happy. I wasn't even aware of that. Hunter pointed it out and made me very happy with that DM. And to your question on what's going on with FLC and Flooring Labs, that is super interesting to see from multiple perspectives. So first of all, we've seen that very significant pump in FLC, their native token, which led to Free Lunch Capital tweeting or posting that basically the safe boxing feature, which is the feature that allows you to, safe box a rarer NFT, a rarer ape that you don't want to lose in the pools, in the liquidity pools, is not really working anymore because it's becoming too expensive with the price pumping. And Free Lunch Capital also put out a very detailed thread explaining how basically the FLC token works and why it is up so much. Because it is the native token of the platform, and the way that all trades are being routed is that more than 90%, I think it was, go through FLC in one way or the other. So it kind of becomes like that central node for all NFTs listed on the platform. And whenever a collection moves, also the flooring protocol, the FLC token price is moving as well and creates an uptick in the token price. And Free Lunch Capital did put together a pie chart that admittedly is a bit oversimplified, but kind of explains how those collections are influencing the FLC price. And for example, the Bored Ape price has a 23% influence, Pudgy Penguins an 11% influence, Azuki a 9% influence on the price. So arguing or following that logic to make it maybe a bit more understandable, if for whatever reason, say, the floor price of apes would double overnight, you would instantly see that reflected in the FLC token by a roughly 24-25% uptick in the token price, because it's so connected in the ecosystem, because it's the main token that all the trading activity is flowing through. So it needs a revamp for some of the features like the safe box, because it made some features of the protocol a bit inaccessible due to the recent move in the price, which is, again, super interesting because the platform is still early, right? Yes, there's significant volume on that, but just seeing already how complex it is to navigate token design in a say closed off ecosystem like that, when you have a couple features working, shows you how complex designing tokens for bigger projects like Memeland games or whatever else we're talking about is. And this is why I find it so interesting to observe what's going on with Flooring Protocol.
Yeah, super interesting. When you're talking about a pump up, for the people who can't see the screen on YouTube, like this has gone ballistic in the last 7 days. The last 7 days is up 150%. It was down at about 0.01 or less than that, and now it's over 0.03, and seems to be holding around there. Very volatile ecosystem. There's various things going on. At its core, one of the things that people, I guess, that they're saying that you can still do is you provide liquidity for, I think it's FLC token, and you get given fractionalized tokens of the NFTs. Is that still the case? Legendary, is that when they say that there's $1.7 million of rewards to be given to liquidity providers, is that the type of reward that you get? Are you familiar there?
There's multiple ways that you can go about it. You can straight away stake your Flooring Labs tokens, your FLC tokens, or you can farm now the FLC ETH pool, which has quite a significant reward attached to it. There's, I think, 50 million FLC tokens in that pool as well. And then you have the individual liquidity pools for fractionalized apes and FLC, fractionalized Azuki and FLC, all of which now have an FLC incentive added to them, as opposed to the rewards that we've seen last year around Christmas, where you also, as you said, received fractionalized Pudgies, Azukis, Apes, and DGODs. Now all of the rewards are centered around FLC tokens.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Very complex ecosystem. A good one to research if you're interested, maybe to try to participate if you're interested. But just a quick reminder, on ETH mainnet, those costs are very expensive when you have to do multiple transactions to interact with this protocol. So if you want to play around and you're playing around with like $100, there's a non-zero chance that your 4 transactions to do with this particular protocol will cost you $27 each, and you might not see that $100 back. So just be aware that that is how much it will cost on some of these DeFi protocols on ETH mainnet when you are playing around. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left. Definitely want to touch on this Bitcoin ordinal news from Jack Butcher. He announced yesterday that back in the day, like when these ordinals were first getting inscribed, a friend like reached out, asked him, mentioned it to him. He thought that, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I understand the provenance aspect of it. We should do something with it. So that's exactly what he did. They inscribed a bunch of early stuff. They're pretty early, these ones that they have. And he's decided that they're going to give 250 of them to current collectors, and then 250 we're still to see what will be done. Legendary, just a quick, I guess maybe we don't have time for a deeper discussion here, but rather than speak about Jack Butcher again, say how great he is as an artist and capturing attention and moving with the trends, like we know all that stuff to be true now already. The question is more around ordinals and where you think that might be going. Have you seen enough now? Because I know we were very late to it. I was very late to it. I've just started participating. I don't know if maybe you've participated a bit more than me or to what extent you have, but what's your thought process with ordinals now, especially against the backdrop of this Jack Butcher drop?
Yeah, look, when I first got into ordinals, I told you it was before wallets, etc., existed, when we had the spreadsheets, Discord servers to trade around. And then there was like this hype period early on, and then the ordinals hype and trend kind of did die down for a bit. But with the revival of the NFT season, if you want to call it like that, and also with the time that passed and allowed people to build out infrastructure like wallets and marketplaces, ordinals obviously managed to capture massive attention and do more volume in NFTs than ETH, than Solana for a good while. So that basically, say, reversal of the trend, or that revival after a long period where nothing really has been going on in terms of volume, is a very strong signal. And I am curious to see, but I'm not deep enough in the ordinals ecosystem for that to see how, or in the Bitcoin ecosystem for that, to see how other things are developing in terms of having smart contract like developments, in terms of having other dApps that are being able to be built on Bitcoin as well, and what the technical requirements are for that. So I just don't have enough familiarity with the technical components of that. But that development of the ecosystem and the potential of that would, for me, be heavily tied to how healthy the ordinal ecosystem would be and would develop over the next months, or in 2024 per se.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I think I agree with you in a sense. Like they're clearly behind on the smart contract side, and I do think there are a bunch of people who want to push their space forward in that respect. Like, and maybe there's a little bit of battle going on between the more traditionalists versus these newer people who want to allow some culture onto the chain, whereas the other one's saying, "Well, no, we can't waste this space. It doesn't make sense." Want to throw to Kusho. We're running out of time, Kusho. So but I know that you've got a lot of thoughts on the Bitcoin ordinals ecosystem. What are your thoughts on this particular movement at the moment?
GM. So right now there's a lot of attention moving around in the Bitcoin space, as well as liquidity, which is sick, like incredible amounts of liquidity. Just to throw some numbers up here. In the past day, the project that I was working for, the blocks, they minted out in 3 minutes. and are currently doing 1.8 BTC in volume right now. Bitcoin Puppets also minted yesterday, who are also doing 78 Bitcoin in volume right now. This is within 24 hours, and this is like 2 projects that are launched on the same day. So it's crazy the amount of liquidity and attention that's being traded there right now. But development wise, I think that's happening on like an underlying side. So it's like this thing that you guys say where everybody's attention is on one place, but a few other people are grinding in a deep corner somewhere, working on something else. So we're starting to see like small DeFi protocols doing little things, little swaps here and there, like Liquidium that allows you to swap like ordinary sats for different other categories and types of sats. So I mean, the development is crazy, but right now the attention in the Bitcoin space is on projects, is on NFTs, is on ordinals, is on inscriptions, is on parent-child, and is on a couple other things. And there's a lot of liquidity to back up that attention.
I like it. I love that take. Thank you so much for the additional like details of the project names, the volume. That's super helpful because for a lot of us who are not on that side, people just don't know. There's too many things to keep a handle on now, and it's very difficult to run an NFT market show and be perfectly across all the things that we do have to consider how we report and stuff. Our reporting is still very ETH heavy. We want to adjust to capture as many of the important things as possible, but it's quite hard to do that in real time. So we're going to be working on that. But we'll be relying on all of you as a way to like make sure we keep up to date. Another shout out to all of you this week. It's been really incredible. Like the comment section is just on fire, providing us with all kinds of extra information. We're going to keep shouting out all the people as always, whenever you do provide the meaningful information or the humorous information, because that information is probably going to get a shout out too. But that is the end of the show, guys. We are very appreciative of you joining us today. We hope you had a good week with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting, and please do have a wonderful weekend. We will see you back Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week next week. Goodbye. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.